Christina's World is a temper on canvas painted by the American artist Andrew Wyeth. The image is based on a real person, Christina Olson, and it is set in a real-life place, which is part of Wyeth's world and where he spent much of his life. But Wyeth has rearranged the elements to create a dramatic and haunting composition. In fact, if you look at this painting, you feel suspended, without a precise reference to time and space. The foreground is dominated by the figure of Christina. Attacked by polio as a child, she was left crippled and was able to move about only by crawling and shuffling. Christina is depicted with the physical structure of an adolescent, but if we look closer, we can see that her figure is that of an older woman. Even though Christina is by far the largest individual feature, she looks lost in this landscape. She seems to be ready to get up and reach a distant point, but she isn't. Despite these details, Christina's body seems to barely touch the ground, but rather to float above it, just like if her wishing hard enough could take her back to the house. She will never let her disease stop her from continuing walking on the grass, climbing the hills, or from laying down next to a river. Wyeth doesn't show us her face, but he stresses her fragility, and the viewer looks at the landscape through her eyes. The path traced on the mowed field in the top right-hand corner creates an axis of the painting, which balances the composition, leading our gaze towards the center of the picture, right upon the hill where Christina's house seems to recede. The distance between her and her house is breathtakingly vast, and every blade of grass is a detail that remarks it. As Wyeth later said, in Christina's words, he could have in fact left out the figure of Christina altogether. Yet, it is in the woman's term that the landscape is perceived and measured. Christina's world was a prison, and her house was her small and lonely kingdom. If we look closely, only her arms and hands belong to the real-life Christina Olson. For the rest of the body, Wyeth used his wife Betsy as a model, mostly because a pose like that would have exhausted the crippled woman. The fact that the artist decided to represent the actual character's arms is emblematic of his desire to portray the woman's pain. The farm itself is not reproduced like the real-life Olson's farm. In particular, there was no gradient and no sloping terrain. Wyeth, by inventing the hill, creates a sense of distance and gives the scene a symbolic value. This is also used to convey a feeling of solitude and helplessness, which is also conveyed by the use of shades of yellow and ochre. Catching the essence, the real feeling of a landscape, is the most important thing to me. I have chosen to describe this painting for what's behind it. In fact, if you look at this painting without knowing its story, you might think that it represents an adolescent girl sitting on a field and looking at a house. You would probably think that she just heard something, or that maybe she's running away from home. As a student of visual arts, I've always been fascinated by the idea of discovering stories behind the works of art. At first glance, the viewer might perceive a sense of calm and serenity, and only after a closer look, we can feel the pain, the suffering, but also the strength of a woman who has never stopped before her desire of freedom.